Sorry, I forgot to ask. All right, I'm going to call our open session to order at 5:47 p.m. And we will begin with public comment for our closed session items only. We do not have any members of the public here in person. Do we have any public comment on email for our closed session items? We do not. Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move on to roll call for our trustees.
Trustee Dickinson,
Here.
trustee Rodriguez.
Here.
Trustee Edmondson,
Present.
trustee Jackson Miller,
Present.
and we know that trustee Donnelly is running a bit late.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and convene to close session now at 5:47.
We'll switch links.
Thank you, Robert. We'll see you at our closed session link.
See you in a minute.
I'm gonna call our open session to order at 6:41 p.m. And we are going to begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance led by our SoCal Elementary student, Josie. And Mr. Witter, would you like to introduce your student?
I would.
Awesome.
So the SoCal Elementary staff is proud to have with Josie and Lassinier as our pledge and mission statement.
Please stand. Place your hand on your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
which
that stands
stands
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great job.
Thank you.
How about that mission statement? You got that too?
SoCal Union Elementary School District Mission Statement. Staff, students, parents, and the community help ensure that each child develops the skills and character necessary for a lifelong achievement and responsible citizenship in a diverse world.
Well done.
Awesome.
Yeah. Don't leave.
Josie, thank you for being here. Thank you for leading us off. It's a great way for us to start our meeting by saying the pledge, but also thinking deeply about our mission statement, what it means for us. We want to thank you by acknowledging you, and we have a certificate of recognition. It says some nice things about you. Can I read it out loud before I hand it to you? All right. Josie's enthusiasm for education makes her a role model for others. She applies herself in all subject areas, especially reading. At any given time, she's toting around 5 to 7 books and can describe what's happening in every one. In addition to her passion for reading, Josie enjoys tackling complex math problems and using multiple strategies to solve them. Giving up is not an option, and she utilizes some of the same skills for learning as she does for surfing, including patience, perseverance, and determination. These qualities, along with her positive attitude and perpetual smile, are the reasons why Josie shines as a cougar. That is. May I please present this to you? We are so proud to meet you and have you. We have little goodie prizes if you're interested, and it looks like you've got a fan club there too, maybe a sibling or close friend. If you'd like to pick out a notebook for yourself, and I don't know, is that a brother? Yeah, do you think he'd like something? Yeah, yeah, a little goodie prize. And then Josie, if you don't mind hanging out with us for just a second, we usually like to just ask you some questions about yourself and maybe what we learned about you from your certificate. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. And we have one of our board members on Zoom over there, so that's kind of fun. He might ask you a question. We might ask you a question in person. Anyone have any questions for Josie?
Well, I'll start off. I had a great time with Josie at SoCal. She met up with me and Scott and Eric and took us on a tour of the school. And I asked her favorite rooms, which does she like. So she took me to the music room, and she's a piano player. She mentioned that. It's been doing that for 6 months. And you could read music too, which is great. Probably because you're so good at math. And then the music room, art room, and then the maker space too. And those desks, those rolling desks they're really impressive. They're nice. And then in the garden as well. And Josie, I had a great time with you. You took your time to show me around because it happened to be recess. And I didn't mean to take your recess time, but no, Josie's very polite and articulate and a wonderful person to be with. And then her friends were coming around, so I realized that I said, okay, go ahead and go with your friends, and off she went. So I had a great time today. You started off my day excellent.
Awesome.
And you're from Pennsylvania too. Yeah, so you like our balmy weather, right?
I was curious about you like reading and that you carry books around. I think that's so
Yeah.
could be 5 to 7 books in your bag. What kind of books do you like?
I like modern realistic fiction.
What is modern realistic fiction?
It's like realistic fiction.
Okay, it would you have a title of a
Or
book?
a series you like?
There's like a bunch of books. Otter.
Okay,
So I have a question. So math and reading, do you, when you're doing both, do you feel or sense anything that's similar to both of them? Is there like an overlap or are they completely different parts of your mind?
Probably completely different.
Okay. Which one do you prefer? Oh, okay.
Right. Any other questions or comments from board members?
and then she surfs too.
Yeah.
Right up my line there too, and how long you been surfing?
2 weeks.
Oh, well, after you moved here,
Yeah.
you didn't surf on the East Coast. A little cold, but it's a little chilly out here too. Right, and that's fun. And then at the middle school, there's a club, a surfing club too, you could hop in on. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Robert, did you have something?
No, I was just gonna say, I'm totally stoked for you. I hope you go to New Brighton because we've got a crazy cool band at New
Yes.
Brighton.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool band.
And what'd you say your favorite room was at SoCal? You told me today.
Baker's Space.
That was
Okay.
cool.
Yeah, that was pretty. That's
And you
a
had to help
great
build
room.
the tables and everything?
Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your evening, but we really, really appreciate you being here, you being willing to answer our questions. Is there anything you think that we should know as your school board, like as a kid, anything you think we should know or we should do better? Now, you can always reach out to us though, because one day you'll think of something and we want to hear it, right? You could write us a letter, you could send us an email, you could come to a meeting, but it's always good to meet our students and hear from you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for Team Josie for showing up to support.
Who do
It's
we have
awesome.
with you here? Mom, dad.
Mom, dad, brother, teacher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's get a picture of them.
Yeah, can we take a picture with you? Is that okay with you? All right.
Just come stand right here in this corner.
And we'd love to have your
And-
teacher and
and then look
principal
this
too,
way.
if they're up for it.
Yeah.
Come on down. And everybody look here, and then we're gonna turn in 1 second. So everybody smile. And, all right, everybody look at mom.
We'd like to put that photo up on our website. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Consent. Yes, thank you for being here. You're welcome to stay and enjoy our entire meeting, but we do not expect it. You have other things to do.
We'll be out of here by 10.
Yeah. Oh, thank
Thank
you.
you.
That's very, very kind. Thank you.
Well,
It's a
Josie, it
pleasure
was
to meet you.
wonderful meeting you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, okay.
Same.
Stay awesome.
Yeah.
Stay on.
Stay on. Very cool. All right. Thank you so much. What a yeah. He wants to stay, yeah.
Oh, sure, yeah.
You can watch it on YouTube.
Yeah, oh,
Fine.
good night.
Future board member in the making.
There you go.
Thank you.
Have to take his name.
Yeah.
No, you can leave it
It's
all.
fine, thank you so much. Okay, that always gets us on a, going on a.
Yeah, let's adjourn, right?
I'm right.
I'm done.
So cool. Next item though, rolling it through is adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay. Report out of closed session. The board met in closed session. We do not have anything to report. Next item is to consider approving and adopting our consent agenda. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We'll give the guy on TV here a chance. to-
All right. Any opposed? None. Great. Next item is public communications. We do not have anyone present in person in the audience, so I'm not going to read our blurb about public communications, and there's no one present to make an in-person public communication. But do we have any emails? These are for items not on the agenda.
We do not.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to our standing reports and begin with our assistant superintendents. Michelle, do you mind starting us off?
I will. Thank you. Good evening, board. So we've had a fun packed 2 weeks. February and March are kind of that lull for us. We're coming down off of first interim and getting everything done for the new year, and then heading into second interim and ramping up for budget development, which is an action item that the board will hear later tonight on our budget assumptions. I had the opportunity to receive some feedback from Ross Recreation. They are the ones that are designing the new playground at SoCal. So they were able to put together some renderings that are very cool, and we'll be able to meet with staff, set up a meeting and get some input from them. Some multiple different designs. That was a lot of fun. Fun projects. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love our solar projects and I love our energy upgrades, but it's not a playground, not a playground for girls. So great rendering. So that was a lot of fun. Also had the opportunity to meet with one of our parents who works for the Bay School, and in her capacity of her job has asked to do a collaboration with the district, and I'll be presenting an MOU to the board at our next meeting about our CNS program for providing meals for the Bay School. And so it was very exciting in 1 year to go from barely being able to have enough staff to provide for our own to entering into the catering business.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited, not only that it is one of our parents and community members that we have the collaboration with, but he's also able to help a non-public organization that we have used in the past, but are not currently utilizing. So that was a lot of fun as well. And then really just we had a boss meeting, which is the front office staff meeting. Lori Struckmeyer, our new director of fiscal, was her first one she had to lead on her own, and I felt really bad because it was only her second meeting, but I only get to say this once in my life. I was snowed in, so I could not make the meeting, but my understanding is, and I think Scott will probably talk about this too, they talked a little bit about enrollment for the upcoming year. And last year, George Lopez worked really hard with our front office staff at the time to get Infinite Campus up where it needed to be and get all of our paperwork in there and the portal and everything. So I'm just really happy to hear some positive feedback on the portal utilization and the process going fairly smooth this year. So that was really exciting. And then other than just gearing up for budget development and all the upcoming budget cycle things that are going to start happening. So that's kind of been my 2 weeks.
Your favorite time of year, right?
It is my favorite.
It's like Christmas, huh?
Yeah. So Michelle, I mean, I live off of the portal and everything else for my kids. Do we have data of how many parents are accessing that or how many students are accessing that? Like how effective that's being utilized?
I don't have any data right now. I can bring that to Friday update
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Because we can just look into do our own reports. Yeah.
Just be kind of curious. I mean, it's a great program, and make sure that we're doing everything we can to advertise it to the parents and so they can be involved more if they're not.
One of the nice things about, we were forced to switch to Infinite Campus or to another SIS system because our prior one was no longer in the SIS business. And so the nice thing with being able to go into Infinite Campus is that's what City Schools uses. So it's a nice for parents. I mean, obviously they're two separate portals, but at least you learn one and you kind of know what you're doing once you head into the high school. So that's been a nice transition.
I might have that exact situation.
There you go.
It is really nice when you have one kid, say in middle school or elementary, and another in the high school. It is nice. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Jessica.
All right. Well, last week, Scott and I had the privilege of going to Santa Cruz Gardens and kind of doing a double whammy with each other at the PJs and Pages event. I was really happy to be able to be reading to the students in person. I had not had that opportunity since before COVID, and was really happy to have a big group of kids with me, and they were amazing. So it was a wonderful experience last week. Also last week, I think the same day, but during the day, we were able to go to the Makerspace build and able to talk to the students and the representatives from Raft and talk about what they do and what the kids were doing. And what I loved most was like the drills. Like these were like awesome, super drills that were like kid size. There's like, I want one of those. So much. But the kids were like, they were taking pictures like Charlie's Angels with their drill. They were like writing on their tables where the parts they had built. And it was just so fantastic. Had such a great time. And I look forward to visiting that space with students lots. Also, today I was able to go to New Brighton and I was able to go to the accelerated Math 7 class. The teacher there had been looking to kind of change the way he was assessing student knowledge. And so rather than giving a test, he did a project-based learning experience. And so what he wanted to discern was whether students could actually amplify through visuals their knowledge of parallel and transversal lines through building like a representative community on paper. And so I got the chance to look at 30 of them today, and they were so good, so good. One of the students in the class I was able to like sit right across from today. Her entire planned community was Taylor Swift related. So the street names were song names, and it was the illustrations were absolutely beautiful. So not only was she accurate with her parallel and transversal lines, she was also very, very creative. So that was a really, really nice experience. And I would like to go back there and talk to that teacher again about doing more project-based learning as assessment measures. Also, was able to meet with the Racial Justice Task Force Subcommittee for Curriculum Instruction last week and talk about our next steps in our particular pathway of equity through professional development. So we did some data collection with our staff in the fall. We're going to do some kind of reflections on the data that we collected and kind of try to figure out where we are now and how to build from there. Specific to culturally responsive education and the strategies behind that. So that was great. We were able to meet with our partners with the California Department of Education, who are specialists in student inclusion practices. And they are going to also in tandem work with us for a professional development day in April to build more particularly practical lessons in UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning, which means learning for all. So really excited about that progression. Today, we got all of the data from the foster and homeless youth families. The county collects feedback from all of those families, and they send it to us so we actually can look at it for our LCAP purposes to determine what those families' needs are, and we can incorporate them in our planning processes. Let's see. Also, super fantastic. Last Thursday through Sunday, I was able to attend the National Equity Project Residential Program at Asilomar with two other staff members in our district, Sandy Figueroa and Carlo Albano. I don't know if you remember Carlo, but he spoke to our board the last time. And it was a very intensive program. The program was really focused around institutionalized and historical oppression of systems. And we were not just a group of educators in this residential program. There were city planners, there were transit unions, and they were from all over the country. So we really got to talk about not just educational systems, but systems in general. And it was rough. It was really rough. You kind of sleep together, you eat together, you do all those kinds of things together. And it was really, we left in such a great space because we're armed with so much more knowledge about structures we can bring into our district that really help us to tease out what is kind of structurally unsound that you can't see, and how to make some shifts in that, so I'm really looking forward to moving that forward. And it was really great to spend time with Sandy and Carlo and meet lots of new friends. And then just kind of lastly, I am the one of the representative members of AXA, which is the Association for School Administrators in California, and Michelle and I sit on that board.
She's the president.
We do a lot of things in that organization, there's advocacy work that we do, but we also celebrate the successes of our leadership and our support staff. And we were able to let my assistant, Jackie Gomez, know that for our region, she is winning the Confidential Employee of the Year award.
Oh,
Wow.
Yes. Yes. So on May 5th, we will be celebrating her at a formal spring thing, and I'm really excited for her. She was very happy today. Yes, really cool. So that's all I have to do. Thank you.
Big congrats to Jackie. There is not a more deserving employee in any district. So happy for her. A few things. So as you know, yesterday, as far as the state of California, the COVID related state of emergency is done. That doesn't mean COVID is done in schools. And so schools across the county came together and produced a letter last week kind of explaining, made some gradual changes, but not abrupt changes. And a couple of those gradual changes are reducing the on-site school testing for COVID a bit. And so at the secondary level, we won't be doing on-site testing starting next week. The elementary level, we're going to be a little bit more gradual and do once a week testing instead of twice a week testing. And then the other, relatively major change on that is that we'll be accepting antigen home tests to allow students who had previously experienced symptoms and or tested positive in order to come back to school rather than the CLIA certified lab PCR test. And that's pretty common across the state at this point. So COVID's still here. We're still taking precautions. We're just kind of taking some moderate.
So is there still testing at the district office? Or are they closing down?
There is at Cabrillo, but there hadn't been at the district office before. So just
They're at Cabrillo.
previously, yeah. It's on site. We had them at all the schools. So let's see what else. Michelle and I and Callie were able to visit Jefferson Union High School District over in Daly City. It was a heck of a drive that day. We earned that visit.
Yeah.
But the visit was well worth it. Jefferson Union is a district that some of us saw present at the CSBA conference in San Diego. They have really blazed a pathway on how to do this and do it well. They've, I think they're over 120, 122 units, something like that. Their district about 3 times the size of ours. So you can kind of start to do some scaling of that in your head, what that could mean for a district our size. But we got to actually walk into the units and see the restrooms and see the bathroom. I mean, see the kitchen, and it's nice. They're nice units. And they're at just over 50% below market value. And so teachers in Daly City and South San Francisco areas, not cheap. A teacher can, or it's 60% teachers, 40% classified staff. So an employee can be, in a unit, a 1-bedroom unit for about $1,500 a month, which is unheard of in that area.
Right.
For a really nice area and
anywhere.
common area. Like, it's not just that the unit themselves are nice. The common living areas are all well thought out. There's conference rooms on each floor. It's a 4-story building. Parking, they have it rotating on this crazy machine that optimizes parking. So
The Carvana vending machine.
Carvana vending machine,
yeah.
basically.
Sounds
So I can't say enough about it.
Wow.
We talk a lot about equity, and equity comes in different forms, but I think providing, it is an equity measure to provide below market value housing for our civil servants, including our teachers, right? And so it's pretty powerful, and I think it's something that we should continue to explore, and we'll continue to explore to see if something like that can work in our district. Let's see, as already been mentioned, the SoCal All Makerspace. So I will just say that was awesome. Pages and PJs, awesome. Shout out to Home and School Club at Santa Cruz Gardens for putting that on, and it was so smooth. Also got to see a play at Main Street, Frog and Toad play. And the main reason I mentioned that is because it was a production of the ELOP program. So the students had worked on that after school and then put on a during school and a nighttime performance of it. So seeing that ELOP come to life in that really fun and meaningful way. I mean, some kids, that's the thing that really grabs them is, being able to perform, and you could see it. So we have some very outstanding actors over at Main Street. We've implemented the Stop It program, which is a web-based app and a mobile phone-based app. And it's basically a way to do anonymous reports, concerns, mostly from students, but it can be from parents as well. It's been used, but it's been used appropriately. I think we've had about 10 incidents so far, give or take a few. So far, they've all been at New Brighton, which we expected, you know, and it's been really powerful. But what I said is like, you can have a great app. But it doesn't make any difference if you don't have the right administrators implementing it. And I want to give a big kudos to Christina and Brittany over at New Brighton. They have followed up on everyone immediately, closed them out as they could be closed out. But then also interactive, because part of the app is you can interact with the student who reports that they can remain anonymous still, but you can still interact. So imagine getting, you know, you report something, and your principal texts you back within the app saying, I'm going to look into that. Where did it occur? You know, it's like, oh, wow, they really are listening. This is not just lip service. So I think that's how you build the trust. So just really proud of those two administrators for making that program be meaningful for students. As already mentioned, all the great work being done on the equity front. So for the student behavior subcommittee of the Racial Justice Task Force, one item that's been really desired and we haven't been able to produce yet is office referral data. So we have good suspension data, and we can break that down by student group to see if any of our own biases are making us suspend students for a given infraction and maybe over suspend for one group compared to another. But we didn't have that data down to the office referral level. So last week, the principals came together and agreed on a common reporting mechanism. So within the next few weeks, we'll be able to have that data set for that subcommittee so they can really take a deep dive into the data. We have an equity walk on March 7th at SoCal. If any of you are interested in joining, I'd love to have you. It's really kind of at the site level implementation of all the equity work we've been doing. And then, of course, just a reminder that on the day after that, on March 8th, we have a governance workshop where we're going to take a look at LCAP overview, budget overview, and the superintendent schools, and all of those things should tie together.
I have a 57-page PowerPoint presentation for you.
All right.
And we don't have an outside facilitator for that, correct?
We do.
Oh, we do. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Oh, for March 8th?
March 8th,
No, we
that's
don't.
just
You
us.
don't. You're right.
Okay.
Thank you. My
All right.
apologies.
No, no. Right, it's the next one. maybe,
Yes,
or we
the
have
next
it
one,
with-
yes.
with,
Like every
Nicole
Wednesday for a while
Anderson's
there.
Okay, all right, thank you. We'll move on to trustee reports.
We don't have that.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't looking
Oh,
at my
I-
agenda.
I-
I'm so
that's it.
sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
Enrique.
I should actually look at the agenda. So next is items from SEA. We do not have anyone here from SEA, and we don't have anything on email from SEA, right?
Nope, not for me.
Okay. And then CSEA.
So CSEA, and Enrique, oh, you have it too. Do you want to read it? Since-
I do. Did you
Oh,
send-
maybe not. No, I'll go ahead and take it.
Okay.
So this is from Enrique Domo, CSEA president. I am sorry, but the CSEA representative scheduled for tonight's meeting had an unexpected situation come up at the last second. CSEA will not have a representative tonight, but the report is CSEA had our monthly meeting last Wednesday, February 22nd. I've sent copies of the new CSEA contract to our CSEA board members and negotiations team. I am waiting for some feedback. I should have a green light from Mrs. Kennedy by Friday. I have nothing else further to report.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
I read it
All right.
as is.
Thank you. All right, now, right, on to items from trustees. Any trustees have anything they want to report? Robert, you got anything you'd like to?
No, I just had a great time at the LCAP. I know we're a couple meetings back, but I thought that was just a fun time. And I've been enjoying meeting with some parents and some fellow people, but nothing to report to the board.
Okay, thank you.
So I enjoyed, Michelle, your report about the catering thing. So after the meeting, can we talk about Meals on Wheels?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as far as the COVID deal goes, I pulled up my calendar. And 3 years ago, on the 4th of March was our last in-person meeting before we went, you know, in
That's
our
right.
boroughs.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's
That's
almost
right.
to the day, 3 years. And as far as things to report, sorry, I missed the makerspace build. I've been talking to Scott about, working with expanding that program a bit. We'll see more later. And I stopped by New Brighton on my way into the meeting, and I saw the Cruise IO trucks over there. So they're happening. That's it for me.
Good.
Thank you.
Around the table, okay.
Yeah, if you- Sure.
Well, guess what I did today? No, I visited SoCal Elementary. And Josie, our pledge leader, gave me a tour. And again, I didn't realize I was taking up her her recess time. But she went along and she showed us everything. And then, of course, her friends showed up and I realized that okay, go ahead. She, boom, off she went. So anyways, no, it was fun. We went into Mrs. Bach's music room and it's really nice in there and it's warm too. And even the art room too, everything seems to, be together, but, it was good seeing her and then what she does for music. And then the art room, these were Josie's favorite rooms. So the art room there, and that was another really nice setup there too. And then in there, that was Susie Blackburn. And then you said it was an intern from UCSC. And they were putting together, okay, I'm not sure what it's called, but the kids have been listening to Peter and the Wolf, the story. And then they draw whatever piece of the music. So, the Peter, which was always my favorite, they would draw, well, they haven't gotten there but they're planning on drawing what I guess comes to mind with that. I mean, that's the best piece. Who knows when they get to the wolf. So, but that was pretty impressive too. In the makerspace, went over there and saw the finished product and another great project too. I like the idea of having big tables on wheels. But it was well put together. And then of course the garden with Megan is it McElroy Art? That's her last name. Okay. Great. I mean, I saw there, last time I was there is when they were just putting it together. So they really have an impressive garden and put together. Now, when we were there, the kids were getting ready to make their own salads. Yeah, I know. Yeah, they were really stoked about it too.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. It was fun watching them.
They brought their dressing room.
Yeah, I know, huh? Exactly. And then going into the office, saw Diana Damer, and I've known her for a while, but it was great. She stopped me, made me put on a patch and we talked. And honestly, because I always forget my picture on the rope, the lanyard, and so it's good that she had me do it. And honestly, I think all the schools should do that, and anybody who goes on to schools, regardless of who they are, should check in and put a patch on there too. So that was good that she did it. And that's about it. Now I suggest doing the same too, if having a student show you the school, pledge leader or somebody else, just have them show you the school. That's a lot of fun.
Very cool. Thank you. So I went up to Daly City with Michelle and Scott and was able to look at the Jefferson Union staff housing, which was really interesting, the creative ways that districts are coming up with to try to support staff. Was interesting. And then the highlight of my last 2 weeks was the makerspace. I went there when they were building it, and Raft is just so neat. They were just all laid out with different tables, and the screw guns, and they had pre-cut the pieces, and the kids were doing all the work. And I loved that. They had, they taught them, the safety stuff, but they laid it out and the kids were, pre-drilling the holes, and they'd get the screw and put it in. And at the end of it, it was a table on wheels.
Yeah, it was.
It was amazing. I know. And then Principal Witter was saying that the idea is that there's this, big room with the materials and the tables, and that when a teacher gets an idea, they'll come up with a project, check, sign into the room, and then be able to just go in, use the room with, to create the project, and kind of have it be an organic kind of creative process, which I just think is so neat.
To shop.
Yeah.
So what street is the teachers housing? Remember what street?
Sierra Mont Boulevard.
Okay,
Sarah,
I was just looking at it.
Sarah
Google
Mont-
Maps.
Oh,
Yeah.
Did they,
right up
Fine,
Yeah.
Sarah Mont-
It's
pretty big street, right?
Yeah.
did they outsource management?
They have what?
Did they outsource the management of the?
Yes,
of the
they have a property manager,
Great.
and they really try to keep
Yes.
separation of, it's not church and state, just the property.
Yeah, you don't want to be knocking on a Chinatown.
Well, I don't have much to report. I did not get a chance yet to see the makerspace, but I think it's so cool and thinking about how many kids, you know, in the past, maybe would have had an opportunity to build like that through Scouts or some outside organization, or maybe they happen to have like the type of home where that's an option for them, but so many kids don't. So opening up like that kind of hands-on learning, right? Thinking still always right, thinking about the pathways, right? Getting that like that access activated at a young age is super cool. So I can't wait to see it. As far as my own activities, I attended the Racial Justice Task Force meeting, which was February 16th. It was the day after our last meeting. And as usual, learned a lot from the team and appreciated the opportunity to observe the process and see where we are now and how we're going to grow and bring more members onto that task force for our next meeting. That's it for me. I think we all went round, right?
Did
Excellent.
get an email from Donna Renee. It
Oh.
just says we don't have any representative for tonight's board meeting, unfortunately, so we have no statement this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, DR. And we'll go on to our first discussion item, which is 7A, discussion regarding updates on the LCAP, our LCAP bite.
Okay, well, thank you. And this evening's LCAP bite is related to goal 2. Through the use of data to identify research-based classroom differentiation, professional development, and systemic, equitable, inclusive, and culturally responsive supports needed to close the predictable achievement gaps. Specifically, 2.3. That just rolls off. Yeah, I just say that to my sleep. Specifically related to our English learner, teacher, and special assignment. And so there are times when through the LCAP process, we really kind of define something that we find as a need and we're not able to fulfill it. And last year and the year before, we were fortunate to have had a really wonderful EL TOSA on our staff. Barbara Hubner was here and she and I worked really closely together to support English learners and their trajectory towards reclassification within our district. Fortunately for her, she found a really great opportunity to work for the county. Sad for us, but I'm just always going to be happy for a person who gets to fulfill themselves professionally. That said, it was a very, very big job to follow. And so we haven't had a person to fill it this year. And so that is something that we will continue to talk about as we move into the LCAP for this coming term. That said, I always hate to report that we don't have something that we wanted to have. That said, our ELD teachers and our intervention teachers who I talked about at a previous board meeting and our general education staff have really taken hold of some of the processes and practices that were kind of created during the time that we had that support. So we still have the road to reclassification forms that the teachers go through with parents of English learners as they're moving towards their reclassification designation. And so we're really happy that we're able to sustain a lot of those changes. And I will say that at our next board meeting, our April board meeting, we will get to celebrate the students who will be reclassifying. And it really is a big celebration for our district. So while I am reporting that we don't have the employee that we had, we will continue that journey and determine whether that is a need that still exists. And know that there's still really great work that's happening. So I hope that the district will be able to fulfill all their hopes and dreams of the LCAP every year when we write it, but that doesn't always happen. And so this is one of those times, but I assure you we tried. Our personnel department has done nothing but try to support us getting someone into this role, and it just hasn't worked. So that's my report. Any questions?
So then in April 19th,
Mhm.
they'll do the the awards?
We'll do the
Okay.
reclassification
The
ceremony.
reclassification,
Yeah.
okay, and that'll be at will that be at New Brighton?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We have lots of really great kids who have done a lot of hard work and our staff.
Do you know how many from each school by any chance?
I can't quantify it
Okay.
precisely, but I would say
Ballpark?
we've got at least 2 dozen students who will be reclassified
All
this
right.
year. So that's a very good number.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
good. Are we
Best
gonna
time of
do
the
the
year.
same kind of celebration?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
That's not of the year.
I'm just thinking back to some of those dashboard numbers we looked at recently that were low for the ELs and
Yeah.
so I guess when we had that TOSA person, they had ideas or they did certain things and now we're kind of trying to continue some of those good strategies. Is that
Yeah.
kind of what we're doing?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is that there were, in addition to our teacher on special assignment, we also partnered with our county office of education and our teachers by and large were involved in what was called EL Rise, which was specific ELD strategies and cultural identity strategies for classroom use for people to feel, number one, included, but also to build language. And so we can see those across the district. So those strategies that were being taught are employed. A lot of the forms that were created during that time in conjunction with teachers are still being employed. Families continue to like them. And we are on a path, we didn't end the path.
Yeah.
But I would like to see another partner.
Yeah.
Because it was a great partnership. And so I just really would like to see that continue.
So what are the barriers? I mean, I can hear that personnel worked really hard to try
Yeah.
and find someone to fill that
Yeah.
position, but is it a position that we're still holding open?
It's a position that's still open. I would say that the barriers to finding someone within our district, and I'm gonna just kind of throw it out there. I think the person that we had worked awfully hard, and it's hard to imagine working that hard. I mean, every one of our staff members works hard. But when you're comfortable with the role you have, even if you're working really hard, it's not trying to learn something new. And so I think we have a lot of great people within our district who could do that work and could do it superbly. It's just scary to try something like that. And then I think also too, it's to get into another teacher's classroom, you have to have that relational trust. And so if you're coming from the outside, building relational trust in a short amount of time to be able to go into a classroom to give, some like partnership to the, kind of design thinking about what's happening there takes time. And that's a little bit scary too, right? So if you know the person, it's a little bit easier. If you don't know them, it just takes a lot more time.
Thank you. That's super helpful. I remember so clearly the board presentation that we had with Barbara, but with the team and it was, it was so informative and so meaningful and really exciting to see the work they were doing. So I know the team's continuing the work, but I also we all know the value of having a leader and a coordinator and a partner like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Particularly interested in what it might take to someday get someone in that spot. That sounds like you're working hard at it.
Yeah,
We're passionate about it.
I keep trying to tell them I'm a really nice person, come on.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you. Oh, we're digging into some policies. All right, and let's see, are these all you or does Michelle get a few? I think the first one here is 4140 bargaining units.
Yeah, so that is one that I'm gonna present. I wanted to make sure that I acknowledge that Sandy Figueroa, our personnel coordinator, really did the work on this. And I just get the pleasure of presenting it to you tonight. So she's just for a little process,
Okay.
our cabinet team is the one that takes all of the board policy recommendations from CSBA and we each take our block. Hers is the 4000s. And so she comes through those and determines which ones to bring. And so it's really a team effort to make sure that we update our board policy handbook on a
Did she
regular
do all the
basis.
strikouts?
She did.
And then rework?
Yep,
Okay.
she did all the
I
heavy
thought that was-
lifting.
Oh,
I
okay.
just
Shout
get
out
I
to
get-
Sandy. I know
yeah.
you were
Yeah,
watching.
sure.
I thought it's something you know, the new law, but oh, that's great with the wording.
Yep.
Okay.
So, so I'm gonna try to summarize the changes that she's identified here in the most succinct way. I will start with, I think the most important thing to understand in terms of our district's practices in this board policy in general, before I get to the specific changes, is that we have instituted a highly effective and routine new employee onboarding and orientation process. And we are always mindful of including our union partners on that. And that's really the big picture of this policy. Sandy does a lot of work on that. Jessica does an amazing job of working with the instructional piece. Like, we really take that onboarding piece seriously. And it's not like, oh gosh, we got to bring in the union on this. It's like we get to bring in our union partners on that. And they come and they have time to talk about everything related to the union at those sessions. So that's the gist of it, is that this policy matches the practice that we have and that we are enthusiastic about. That said, there's lots of wordsmithing in this board policy. And so those are CSBA recommendations, and sometimes it may just have, the typical like shall instead of may. So you'll see a lot of those. And so those are just CSBA recommendations for clarity. To really hone in on the changes for new laws, there is one that specifies that we have 20 days to fix any mistakes we make when we give our union partners the list of employees. So that's an agreement that all districts have to have, is to say, these are the people we've onboarded. Now this is our complete list of employees and their contact information. And if we make any mistakes in that, we would always get it back sooner than 20 days because we're responsive. But of course, this is a policy that guides kind of all districts in California. And so this is saying you have a maximum of 20 days to make those corrections and get the updated list to our union partners. And then there's also a law that specifies what happens if we couldn't hold an in-person version of that new employee orientation. There is a new law, and it's baked into the language here in this policy, that says we need to let our union partners know that we're not able to hold it in person. And if they want to hold an in-person meeting, then we can support them doing that.
Right.
Yes.
So a question about the employee list. So that goes to the bargaining unit?
Yes.
Is there any confidential information?
Well, we only give like the district email address and everything. So
Oh.
yes, there are guidelines on ways to make sure that no confidentiality is exposed.
I feel like I missed something when I first read this, but supervisory employees.
So
that?
we don't have that in some bigger districts. I'll give you an example. The first 22 years of my career, I spent Ontario Montclair School District. It's a big district, 32 schools, 25,000 students. And it's big enough that the principals, in this case, who are managers, had a unit, right? They had an association. It was a name only. There is no bargaining power, for a supervisory or a management unit. It's for input and say, hey, all the principals got together and this is something we would like to relay to upper management. We don't have that in our district. Most smaller districts don't, but you could have it.
So who would fall in that category?
Managers. It could be
Yeah.
principals having a group. It could be all administrators having a group. But again, in our district, some of those groups are groups of one, right? So it wouldn't really make a
So
lot.
some of the language in these policies is general for all school districts,
Right.
and it's in here in ours, even though we don't have it. You never know. one
Right.
day
We wouldn't want to restrict it.
Right.
Right. Principals did want to have that, even though it was only 4, but yeah, in all actuality, it's unlikely in a small district.
So we'll have stuff, we'll talk about high schools, and we don't have it, but it's included.
If
Right.
it's, yeah, if it's only for that's a good example, Phil. If it's only for high schools, then we usually try to
Yeah.
weed that out. But yeah, if it's something that could be possible, then yeah, leave that open.
But so that's what this is asking. It's basically creating the supervisory employees are now allowed to.
They've always been allowed. This just
Oh, they've
clarifies the
always been
language for
allowed.
it. Yeah,
Right.
like I said, for 1990, there was in the
Oh,
district
yeah.
I worked in, there was such a group. So,
Yeah.
but that's not the gist of the changes in here. That language has always been a part of this board policy. The gist of the changes are about what we have to do with our, in fixing any mistakes on that list and our 20 days to fix
Yeah,
it. And then making sure that if we can't hold an in-person orientation, that we give the unions a chance to do that themselves.
Any other questions comments from the board?
So the new employee orientation is, that's just semantic changes?
Yes, so, yes, there are, like I said, I forget exactly how they changed it, but instead of new employee orientation, like orientation for new employees or something.
They added the word onboarding.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, and it's important, you know, because we want people to know the culture and protocols of our district, but so.
So at one time, I got invited to the new employee, the day, you know, they had the meeting. And as a board member, it came in and did like 5 minutes of hi, I'm the board member, and then I got out of there.
Yes, yeah, we generally invite board members. Yeah.
And rep said, wow, you know, people don't usually do that.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions on this one? All good, Robert?
All good. Just reading it, just keeping up, reading through it.
Thank you. All right.
Just one, on page 35, the dark italicized, long paragraph. Did Sandy write that out, or was that inserted with the SB language, or
Is that maybe page 36?
is it 36?
Starts with however.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was recommendation from CSBA.
Oh, geez.
Mhm.
It's like,
It's quite a run-on
just
sentence,
like,
isn't
you
it?
know,
We could come up with that.
different level, you know, you read it and I'm just going in circles
yes.
on something like this.
No,
And
Sandy and I sat down a couple times and went through it, because kudos to her, because lots of policies have language that
Yeah.
kind of you got to read 2 or 3 times. This one had some you had to read 4 or 5.
However, before dismantling the multiple employees, I mount. Jeez, man. Okay, well, let's make it a 6th grade level.
Right. Seriously, well, it sounds like.
Yeah,
Everyone good here
yeah.
at the table, so this was a discussion item. If the board doesn't have any further questions, I will, it'll come back in our next consent agenda with the suggested changes. I did want to check back. I did forget on our last item on the LCAP bite. I forgot to check to see if we had any public comment. We don't have anyone in person still, so I'll just be checking whether we had any emails on our previous item and whether we have any emails on this item. No, thank you for checking.
No.
All right. Thank you. Then we're going to roll on to our next discussion item, which is board policy 5148.2 before and after school programs.
Okay, well, that one is mine. I have 2 this evening. This is the first of them. This one is a new board policy 5148.2 related to before and after school programs. And this specific policy, like I said, it doesn't have all the strikeouts, it doesn't have all of those kinds of things because we didn't have the policy before. But the intent of this policy is really to help the board to understand and the community to understand that we do have extended learning opportunity programs now. Those are they're different, they're differently funded than we've had in the past. So this really tries to address that. The first part of this policy, the beginning part of it really just says like, we'll have the right people trained to do the right things so that kids will learn. And that's a responsibility during the day, but it's our responsibility before and after school. This policy also does talk specifically about some named programs from the past. And those are kind of in the middle of the policy. ACES is one in particular, 21st Century CCLC. Those are all programs that have existed in the past and either been paid for by district funds or not. In our district, we didn't have a policy. So these are just for instances. There are some districts that actually use these, and we always reserve the opportunity to use some of these, and that's why it's in the policy. Right now, we have an extended learning opportunity or expanded learning opportunity program that doesn't require that because it's mostly internally staffed. We did bring a plan to the board 6 months ago, I want to say. And really what the obligation under this policy says is that we actually do have a plan for what we're gonna do, and we share that with the board, and the superintendent or designee will actually be held accountable to that. There's also a section in here that says we won't be charging fees. We don't charge fees. And then there's another section that the board might not completely understand, because it took me a lot of time to figure out what exactly it meant. But where it says eligible students who are 11 or 12, it seems like it's such a random statement, but those ages of students don't fit under the child welfare, the child care and welfare statute. And so they're like, we have to offer them a program anyway if we have the bandwidth to do so. That's basically what it's saying. Because we're a K-8 district, we actually name it. That makes sense.
I still have a question when you're done.
Yes, well, of course, I hope so.
About that.
And it also says that we will monitor how the students are doing. And that's something that we do in our interim programs, our summer programs, and our regular day programs. Questions?
So 11 or 12 years old, no matter where they're at. So do we have any 11-year-old fifth graders?
Mm-hmm.
So we would have to provide, if we would take them from the childcare, CKC, and put them into a class.
As it turns out, our expanded learning opportunity program doesn't require us to partner with CKC in this moment. So like we offer enough of a program so that we're not reliant on CKC to be able to do that.
Take their clients away from them and put them into a classroom.
Oh, we do. I mean, right now, our expanded learning opportunity program has, I think we counted recently, we've got 350 students who have been participating. So those kids could all be somewhere else if they weren't there.
So how's CKC doing?
They still love us. We still love them.
Yeah. Well, and it's probably a partnership in terms of like, just like when parent clubs would do some kind of after school program on Fridays, right? Like the kid might go to CKC, and then be walked over to their after school enrichment and then back to CKC if parents don't pick them up until 5:30 or 6, right?
Yeah, that's the perfect example. And there is a handoff process that's.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. That was it. But yeah, I had to read that a couple times.
Yeah, in all board policies, there's always like one of those things where you're like, why is that in there? And then you have to really figure it out. But yeah.
Thank you for doing the legwork for us. Questions?
I was just looking at the part where I think it's the last paragraph, every 3 years, the superintendent or designee shall review the after school program. But do we in a policy need to mention that means that, the teacher or the staff would be collecting information?
I mean, under this policy, it's a 3-year plan. We don't do it that way. We do pretty much trimester by trimester, and we consult with our schools and who because of the nature of our program, our staff run it, so we cannot not ask them. So it's kind of an ongoing process all of the time. I don't know, did I answer?
Collecting data.
Yeah,
That's what to evaluate the effectiveness. So I was just wondering, like along the way, do we add that to is it in there? Do we make a policy or do we add that the staff would collect data?
In the plan that we wrote, the expanded learning opportunity program plan, every school wrote what classes they were going to offer and how they were going to collect data. So each of the sites has decided to use like multiple metrics. So just like in the SIPSA plans that they create, the same with the expanded learning opportunity program. So if, for example, at Main Street, they're saying, well, we're going to do drama and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. How are we going to measure the success of our students through those programs? They actually kind of quantify that in the plan. And that plan we don't do every 3 years. We did a plan. We'll do another plan at the beginning of next year. And so the beauty of having our teachers and our classified staff teach the classes is that we have those students in our classrooms every day. So a lot of our internal metrics also work. So we can see like, how are they doing with reading and writing, math, and all of those other things. So they might have a metric that they're using for their expanded learning program, but we also have internal metrics.
But that doesn't need to be in the policy. I guess that's my question is.
What data point we're using does not have to
Not
be in the
what
policy.
data point, but that the staff would collect data points so that the superintendent or designee can evaluate it. Like,
I think
know
the way
what
to say it,
you're
if I
saying?
can, yeah, no, I think if I can paraphrase,
Yeah.
I think our practice is superseding the minimum requirements of the policy.
okay, so it doesn't have to be in the policy. Okay.
No. So this is a
Thank you.
CYA kind of thing that covers every district in the state.
Yeah.
So you can't get theoretically hard to get sued with this one.
Well, and I would say like there are many districts that contract out fully, right? And so
Oh, yeah.
that other entity doesn't know the students. So they would have to do a separate form of data collection than we have the opportunity for.
But I appreciate a policy that is has enough room and flexibility for us to operate.
Right. Me too, but it's always good to hear that not only are we in compliance, we're like super, you know,
Super in
right,
compliance.
right? Because the thought of only taking a glance at this every 3 years,
That's
that
really-
really doesn't.
Those kids are in high school.
Right, right. I
Right.
mean, I'm glad it has outcome measures in there, but
Yeah.
that we've got a plan, so. Excellent. Other questions from the board? No, we're good?
No, I just appreciate the work you do with CKC. I know I'm glad that's not a contentious relationship and we've turned that into a positive.
Yep.
Thank
And how long did it take you to get all the attributions here? 8 pages or 7 pages?
You know, some
Yeah,
have more
no.
than others. But I would say, we probably don't like look at every single one of them all the way through, but yes.
Very cool. All right. I think we got all of our questions answered on this one. No one in person from the public to ask questions. Do we
No
have
one
any
on
email?
email.
No one on email. I'll just keep asking as I do. So thank you. And we'll see this one again in consent with the changes. Next up is discussion on board policy 3110, transfer of funds. It's Michelle's turn.
I'm just gonna say it is not labor relations and it is not after school programs, but transfer of funds is really fun, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah.
So mine is pretty short and sweet. There was just some minor wordsmithing to bullet point number 4 in regards to if the district were to have a special reserve fund, which we do not. But that if we did have one, these are the regulations on how those monies, if not used for its purpose, can regenerate itself back into the general fund. And a special reserve fund, as an example, would be something like an OPEB is what we would call it. Like if we're setting aside money for post-retirement, the district has an obligation if they're continuing to pay. Sometimes districts will set up a special reserve fund for those out year obligations, but we don't have one. But it was an update, and I'm not gonna lie, Scott and I did this one together because the new gamut assembly system I didn't want to dive into it. I'm not gonna lie. So, but it went great. It was easy. This is a pretty bland policy. So if anyone has any questions, which ironically enough, I have an action item later in the evening that deals with transfer of funds. So, but yeah.
So what is the purpose of this policy?
That there is authority to transfer funds if need be by either the board or a designee of the board.
But they're making it a little more difficult to do this. So there's a reason for that, I think.
More difficult, I actually read the opposite of, they were making it easier.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Then because they kind of take out the verbiage of like that the board has to give, go through board first
Right.
before doing this if a designee decides that those funds, or go through the auditor, yeah.
Okay.
Per ed code. So most districts don't.
Well, that's also unrestricted funds. You can't really suck up restricted funds, right? Or bond, I
No.
should say, sorry.
There are many different versions if you were doing a special reserve fund and as to the mechanism of why you were collecting the money.
Okay,
And if it was an OPEB or something like that, how you could then collect monies out of restricted accounts but it's very
really? Okay.
specific if you're doing it for post-retirement benefits. Not if you're setting up a special reserve fund for, say, capital outlay or something like that.
There's still a stopgap. Obviously, it still has to go through the superintendent or an auditor or whatever. Right. Okay.
Yeah, not only our auditors, but the county auditors, the county office of education folks, like, so there's, yeah, those multiple. I'm sorry, Robert, I keep looking at the TV, but I know you're seeing me in the out. I know. So yes, many different areas. I did it again.
Oh, yeah, it's hard not to.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sure I'm doing the same. Yeah. All right. So another cleanup, basically, with a little update. Any further questions from the team? Okay.
I kind of like the what do you call it? The references at the end of the policies instead of in the middle of the policy.
Yeah.
It just,
Yes.
it's,
cleaner.
yeah, it is.
It
You
is.
flow through when you read it. I noticed some of the some are repeated too, like the previous one. That's why you got a long list. They repeated themselves.
Yeah. All right. Sounds like we've covered everything with the board. Any comments or questions from the public on email?
No,
Nope.
sadly not the one.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll see what happens next, but thank you, and we will see this one again on the consent agenda next time. Next up is board policy 5148.3 preschool early childhood education. We're just Scott, are you gonna get another one?
Oh, okay.
So this is a discussion on first reading of a new board policy 5148.3, and I will just apologize to the board in the status section of the memo. It refers to 5148.2 rather than 0.3. So it actually is about the preschool and early childhood education suggested policy. Technically, our school district does not run a preschool program, but Scott and I did discuss this a number of times, and because next year in our TK program, we are bringing in students earlier than the legal minimum requirement, we felt that this was an important policy, even if it's only going to be in use for us for a short time. And really, this policy does say that we have some obligations when we're bringing in students before their TK experience. And that is that we will consult with local childcare providers to make sure that we have, the programs for kids that they need. So this might include students with specialized services, English learners, and the policy kind of explicitly kind of goes into all of the ways in which we need to ensure that we are meeting the needs, all of the needs of the students that are coming to us. We do that when they come into TK. It's just a group of students that are just going to be right below that age slice coming in. We also, in this board policy, there is some discussion about the eligibility for TK enrollment. And that shall not impact a child's ability to be in a preschool program. For us, it's the same program. So it does seem like a little wonky to put it in there, but it is the suggested language. And we do calculate our ADA from those students differently. So we don't collect funding for them until they actually turn the legal age.
Oh, okay.
So there is a difference in those two students, even if they're in the same classroom.
Okay.
I talked about identifying dual language students. Again, we do have English learner support for all of our students in every one of our schools, no matter what. And then there is a section here that talks about at-risk children. We do, for all of our schools, have a cost system, which is a coordinated services team that looks to support all students that are at risk in our district, no matter the age. There's a section in this policy that talks about proper training, and that everybody's trained to the level that is required to be a instructionalist or in the classroom. Right now in our TK classes, we have a teacher and an aide, basically to meet the ratio. So it's already built a built-in safety guard, if you will. And And then it just talks about admission policies of the preschool. Because we don't have a separate preschool, we don't have a separate admissions policy. And then it also really refers to, and if you've ever had a preschool student or a student in TK, the suggested use of the early learning standards is kind of what is emphasized here. So it's not intended for students in TK or preschool, if you will, to have a highly rigorous academic schedule. It's really intended for those early learning foundations to be really the majority of their school day. And so that's basically the totality of the policy. Again, it will just be this year that this policy will really need to be in place unless we decide to start a preschool that is more universal. And some districts are doing that. We just haven't gone down that road this time. Thank you. Any questions?
Paragraph 3,
Mhm.
so Scott's got to come up with preschool options in the community. So is that our district is the community? Or the county?
Our district is the community, but the interesting part of this is that it's the way that it's worded suggests that there isn't any other option available. In some communities, there isn't another option that's available. For us in the community that there are lots of community partners that offer early childhood education.
So that becomes a job, doesn't it?
On one of our facilities that's offered by.
No, but I mean, every childcare place, somebody's house and stuff like that, we have to
Just have them call the childcare switch.
No, but I will say this, we do have some legal obligations when children meet a certain age, and there is the underlying identification of what might be a need of a student that is beyond what's typical. We do assess preschool students for speech and language, services. We do all of that stuff. That is the obligation of the school district, no matter where the child is.
Okay.
And then just to explain that the reason that we only need this now is because we're accepting students that are younger than, is it that 4 years? Is it 2025 when all the TK, the 4-year-olds
Will be in TK.
TK, and then this won't really be relevant
Right, unless we have
unless we.
something else that we're doing, so yeah.
Okay.
Anything else from the board? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll see it again next time in consent. And next up is 7F. There we go. Scott's turn.
Yeah.
Board policy,
Be left
board
out.
bylaw, 9322, agenda and meeting materials.
Before I start,
anything in
Yeah.
the public?
Thank you.
Oh.
Did we have anything from the public on our
6
last
emails.
item?
Yeah, I know, nothing on email.
Thank you for the reminder. It is harder to remember when we
Yeah.
are an empty house. And does anyone need a break? Is everyone doing okay? You okay? All right.
So before I get started on the details of this, I want to say thank you to the board. I know this is a lot of policies. We try to balance our little catch-up period with not overwhelming you. Hopefully, we found somewhat of a sweet spot. I also want to thank Jen, being relatively new to the role and having to learn this new process of updating board policies. She's done an amazing job behind the scenes of making the changes and getting them board document. And that's no easy task. So thank you, Jen.
Does she also have to ping people and remind them to get things turned in?
Those gentle reminders.
Yeah.
Occasionally, mostly the superintendent.
Oh, thank you.
So this board bylaw 9322 is about our agenda for our meetings, really pertinent to what you all do, of course. And of course, there are certain guidelines that have to be followed for that. And this updates big picture, one new law, but then also some rewording from CSB recommendations to make the language cleaner and clearer, hopefully. So in the first paragraph under agenda content, the word place has been updated to location. My thinking is that that's a little bit more precise, right? A little bit more than just the place, the actual location. And the fourth paragraph under agenda content, the language for how an individual can request accommodations has been changed and hopefully clarified So that, of course, we want to support if somebody needs extra accommodations to be able to take in one of our meetings. Of course, we want to do that, and this ensures that every district has to do that.
On the second paragraph, it says testify, members of the public opportunity to testify at any regular meetings. Is that?
So that's
I think,
not.
I think of Perry Mason.
Yeah.
That's not one of the changes. That's been in the board policy for a long time.
Yeah,
But I would imagine that testify is when they get up and make their statement, right? So another way to say that, but
Okay.
it sounds a little bit more precise than what we used to. Isn't it?
Antique. Sounds old.
So yeah, that fourth paragraph just gives a little bit more specificity on how we would support an individual who needs accommodations, to be able to take in one of our board meetings. Under agenda preparation, that first paragraph, CSB has recommended that in addition to student learning, that student well-being is added. This one was, for me, rewarding because if you look up at our board policy and mission statement, mission statement and commitments, there's a lot about well-being, right? We realize that a student's well-being has to be addressed in order for them to optimize their learning opportunities. So this is an instance where the policy has caught up to our practice, which is always the right place to be, in my opinion. In the third paragraph under agenda preparation, the process for what occurs if a request for an agenda item is deemed to be merely a request for information. So you know that in our governance handbook, there is a process for requesting an agenda item. And if that request is deemed, no, that's just a request for information. That's not an agenda item. And that process is clarified. And again, I venture to say that matches our district practice and that you have to respond. You can't just decide it and not be responsive. Like somebody requests that, they deserve an explanation. And then the new law part of this, under the section titled Agenda Dissemination to Members of the Public, there's been a new paragraph added. It's now the fourth paragraph in that section, and that's in accordance with the new law, SB 274. Those are the updates to handling our material for our board meetings. We want to take any questions.
so for requesting future agenda items on our agenda, there's been a couple items that have been here for quite a while.
And they're getting close.
Okay, am I ahead of you?
No. I mean, those we have I think a couple of them are going to be.
Well, I'm just saying, how long should we have them on the agenda? Have them on the agenda 2 weeks before they come, or 2 meetings before they come up, because this looks stagnant. Mine's from September 22, and then Phil's has got was discussed, but it's like, okay, that's kind of a long time. I'm not sure what the perception of that is, but I know my request is there, and then pop it in, I don't know, closer to the meeting when it's gonna appear.
No, I think that's I'd be willing to take that input. I think our practice has been until that item gets addressed at a meeting, it stays on as an upcoming agenda item. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. Sorry, we both started at the same time. What I like about having the list here, which I know we didn't do for a long time, is it does let members of the public know that something's coming up, right? That it's on the horizon.
It's also a good reminder for us.
Yes, it is a good accountability
Yeah.
piece when we're doing our agenda setting meetings to just, again, check in. Okay, we know that's coming, and yeah, something's gonna come off that list when it's addressed, at a meeting in 2 weeks.
Well, I'm sure nobody's called and said, hey, Ted's suggestion's been there since 2022.
Off the hook.
I just look at it thinking it's just stagnant.
Yeah. How does that work? Is there like a plan of when they're gonna be addressed?
So I think a couple of those items are actually going to be addressed at our March 8th.
That might be nice to, like, to Ted's point, just to add in when we're
Yeah.
planning on a ballpark of when we're planning on talking about it.
It's like spring or something.
Yeah, something, yeah.
It's like waiting for Ted Lasso's third season. Finally, it's there.
I think for our next agenda, there's only gonna be one
Right.
item hanging on there, and then we could certainly kind of give an update on our estimate on that
And
technology.
that's the
report.
IT one, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's coming up.
March
pretty soon.
15th.
March 15th.
So,
Oh, well then, wow.
We might clear the deck.
Okay.
so I missed the achievement gap one, I guess. So and I thought I watched all the meetings, but I didn't see that.
Did address.
We
the-
did, yeah.
We did do
That
two
was-
of those.
yeah.
Um,
It was October,
Okay,
October, or November.
but we could also include it in it's gonna be included in our meeting next.
oh, well, then that's fine.
Perhaps an idea, that's just an idea to try to find maybe a common ground of it, because I hear, like, how can we make sure the public knows not only the request been made, but that there's a plan to
Plan, yeah.
address them,
Yeah.
and trying to find a way to do that. Perhaps the next time we update our board governance handbook, we can bake some of that language in.
Right.
Yeah,
Good
good
idea.
idea. Good, thank you. Other questions or thoughts on this policy update?
And then on page 68, on dissemination, so all the PDFs and PowerPoints will be in the agenda when we get it on Friday.
And that's always been our practice.
Right.
Right, we've. Yeah, I think we really try to take that to the extreme for a lot of reasons. One, because I think if something's gonna be discussed at the board level, then the public should have early access to that too. There are times that we had to, add a supporting document. Whenever we do that, we update the board website so that there's a
Mhm.
supporting document linked right next to the board docket.
And so this also includes anything that's handed out during the meetings too, doesn't it?
We try not to do a lot of
I know,
handouts.
I know.
I mean, that's something that I've tried to.
Right.
And usually
Yeah,
the only
good.
handouts we've had is like, I make a mistake on a board policy and I update one page. Like, something of that nature, but not like new material. And our staff, well, sometimes that's hard on staff, right? Because
is, yeah.
it's basically a week in advance, so you gotta
Yeah.
have really important stuff ready, but our staff regularly rises to the occasion.
And it's our outside consultants are.
Yeah, same, right? Like when
Yeah.
Planetech does it,
Mhm.
I'm sure there are places where they can turn that in the night before the board meeting, but
Right,
they know
right.
here it's a week before.
Yeah.
Okay, that was it.
And then I was just scrolling down and seeing on page 69, we do have kind of the provision on that off chance that something happens and one of our presenters doesn't have their PDF available and it's not included in the docket, which doesn't happen very often.
Mhm.
Right, but that's right in compliance with our practice too. So you have to make it available for public inspection at the DO and we put it on the website
Yep.
as well. And we have the ability to do that if someone actually distributes a document at the meeting, but yeah, that hasn't happened. In my, as
We try
long as I
hard.
can recall, yeah, yeah.
If it's gonna be talked about at the meeting, we like it to be in the docket. So everybody's on the same
Absolutely.
page.
Perfect.
It really helps with the consultants when you say, if you really want that to go to the board, you better have it for me. It
Well,
can't go
and we
without.
And we're all in compliance with our own practices and bylaws in actually, right, reading all of our agenda items and ahead of time and being prepared with our questions and asking staff questions ahead of time and can't do that if you don't have the materials.
There you go.
Yep.
And
yeah.
just to understand that, our policy we publish the agenda, it's 72 hours. Is that on the website or is it in the district office?
Both.
Yeah.
So it's every school site displayed, the agendas physically on the display case outside of the district office building.
Yeah.
And on all the websites.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to have a
Seven.
book, hard copy in the office
Yes.
as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's a list of people who ask for our agenda, like the press and all those, so that has to all go out too.
That Jen has.
But now you
several
don't mail
different
them, they're all
distribution
emailed.
lists. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the part about if people insist on having a paper copy mailed to them, then they have to provide it.
Right.
Postage, because I can
Right.
imagine like the June docket is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
By mail, like.
We have been there.
When they're closing a
Postage.
they.
Yeah, thank goodness for PDFs
Yeah.
and web links.
Yes.
Thanks
Any
for
other
always-
questions from the board?
No.
No? Any questions? You good, Robert?
Yeah, no, good. Everything seemed great. I love adding well-being. I had that noted earlier too. I think that's an important and certainly goes with our mission statement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm glad we're bringing forward the policies.
Yeah.
It's my favorite.
I know.
And remember first coming on, there's still typewritten
Mhm.
policies,
Yeah.
Michael James is affirmative action officer when it was, gone, and that was typewritten in our book, so.
And then with links, like if someone really wants to dig in and
Yeah.
click that link to the
Yeah.
ed code and
Oh,
like,
yeah.
can you imagine? Otherwise it would have been like, and then you need to go to the library. And
Oh, that's right.
Oh, boy. Okay, so we're good here at the board. We don't have anyone in public. This one
Nothing
seems
on
like a
email.
topic for email. No emails.
So
Okay.
shocking.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We made our way through the policies and big from all of us, a huge thank you to all the staff members for doing the heavy lifting on
Keep us in compliance.
keeping us in compliance and making and doing the hard work of making it easy for us to understand what the changes are. Because I can only imagine how many times you have to read through a few of these. We're on to our action items. So our first one is to consider adopting the resolution for district to borrow cash from the county treasury. Michelle.
So thank you, board, for spending the rest of your evening with me, since I have the next three action items. Yes. This first one, just for a little background. I bring a resolution to the board 3 times in a year. One is to borrow cash from ourselves. That is typically if the Child Nutrition Services Fund is running low on cash, we borrow from with ourselves from the general fund, we give to them, they pay us back. That's the most optimal way. And we have a resolution in place that allows for that to happen. The second resolution we bring to the board is to borrow money from the county of Santa Cruz Treasury. And in that case, from July 1st through April 24th of every year, or I should say the last Monday of April, so the date somewhat moves every year, we can borrow cash. In our case, we are very heavy on our tax teeter, which is our property taxes that bring in our cash as opposed to our apportionments from the state. So we really get our largest cash influx in December and April. And we typically, if there is ever a need, it might fall within the month of November if we run low on cash. And then to make payroll, the county of Santa Cruz Treasury Department will float the loan and then we pay back the negative interest. Happens very rarely, but it does happen. Spring, and since I've been here, we have never had to borrow in the spring because our teeter usually comes in well before the April payroll, so it's not an issue. The third resolution that comes to the board is between the April 24th mark and the June 30th mark. The county treasury of Santa Cruz will no longer extend the opportunity for us to borrow from them. So the county office of Santa Cruz, the COE, has a resolution in place that the 10 districts, if need be, between that 6-week period, can borrow from them to cover a payroll situation. And again, I don't know if it's really ever happened. It might have happened like in 08-09 when cash flows were really bad. Most districts now, their cash flow is pretty strong just based on that. But that all being said, I bring the 3 resolutions to the board every year for approval because I don't want to put the district in a situation where we might not have cash. And these are the 3 opportunities available to us. And so tonight's would be from borrowing from the County Office of Education between April 24th and June 30th with a payback period typically in July.
Thank you. Super clear explanation. Thank you.
Well, if we don't have money, will they have money? Yeah.
Well, I'll go to PV now.
Who do they borrow it from?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
What's the rate?
Very
Yeah.
low. It's like, I think it's less than at 1.5%.
Oh, yeah.
And most times if like in I think it's 2 years that since I've been here, we had to borrow in November and it was for a matter of days.
Right.
And then our cash influx came in and then we paid them back. But so.
So I'm gonna ask you just to explain arbitrage and why we can't do it.
Arbitrage is when you make money off of money. And since we are a nonprofit, that's the basicest way you can say it. The biggest thing where districts get in trouble with arbitrage is clearly through bonds. So you sell your bonds to start a project and you sell $20 million worth of bonds and then you sit on the money for 2 years because you delay the start of the project. So you're making money off of borrowed money, and that is illegal for a school district to do that, and you have to pay arbitrage back. And so that's why we don't do that.
Yeah, so the first time this came up when I was on the board, I said, well, we should borrow like a ton of this.
Yeah.
They're like,
No.
We're in the wrong hat right now. Yeah.
so, no, Bill.
No. Nice try. All right.
That's my new word for tonight.
Arbitrage.
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 I'm looking it up likely.
It's a fun word.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Any other questions from us? No? This is the one where we're gonna have a question from the public. Do we have a question from the public?
They sadly do not have questions.
Okay. All right. Well, this is a resolution. We've had our discussion. Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution?
I moved.
Do I have a second? Sally seconds. All right. So as a resolution, we're gonna do a roll call vote. Jen, when you're ready, if you don't mind.
Trustee Dickinson,
Aye.
trustee Rodriguez,
I,
trustee Donnelly,
I,
trustee Edmondson,
Aye.
trustee Jackson Miller.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, consider approval of the change order for the climate tech contract. Lots of words.
So in the past, during our bond projects, we did bring change orders to the board fairly regularly due to underground issues. And so this is our first, or no, I shouldn't say that. This is our second change order. Our first change order was very minimal. This change order is a large one, $679,169. And this is in direct relation to the relocation of the solar panels at both, the majority of this change order is a direct relation to the SoCal L change, and then a small for the New Brighton. We had in our initial proposal when working with Climate Tech, the parking lot at SoCal Elementary was not optimal for solar based on its configuration and its accessibility for fire and life. So, and the more cost-effective manner would have put it as a shade structure over a field. And so that was where we went. And after getting into what we needed to get into, it won't work in the field. Between underground and a proximity to the play structure. Because of the underground having to constantly move it, it just basically put it in the middle of the field at SoCal, which would not make anyone happy. So we reverted back to the parking lot plan. And so these additional costs would have been part of the original contract had we gone with the parking lot situation. They are not incurred due to more charges. We tried to reduce our initial proposal by placing it in the area that it was. And so now I did want to add though, Trustee Rodriguez, after your comment to Tyler from Climate Tech about how close the solar structure was to Porter, they went back and they re-looked at that and realized that if they changed the array to 3 side-by-side ones instead of 2 and 1 along Porter, it actually put us under DSA. And so they're prefabs for DSA. So we don't have to wait for them, and it was more cost effective. And we are not on the street. So
yeah,
Climate Tech would like me to thank you for the suggestion.
John, go get my bill.
And then we had a small change at New Brighton, moving that third panel over, and both the renderings are within the, ironically enough, that is the not updated rendering after we just talked about having updated documents. I realized the one for the SoCal L still has the one that is facing Porter, and that's the one that's removed, and they're 3 side-by-sides. Yeah.
So can you describe that a little? The 3 side-by-sides?
So instead of, we go to the rendering,
There's a picture, I think.
But I think the picture is inaccurate.
the picture is inaccurate,
Yeah,
yes.
they're in a.
The long, the long structure along Porter
Mhm.
is what they had originally, and then parallel to the school, and then more of a square one in the middle.
Mhm.
And then after the last meeting and they going back and looking at it, they were able to basically put the one parallel to the school, that size 3 back. So it changed from a square to a longer, and it removed the one along Porter, and they're kind of all parallel to each other, the same size.
So there are 3 that are parallel to each other.
Mhm.
And
Yes,
yeah.
yeah, and slope,
And they're perpendicular to Porter.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Boom, boom, boom.
yeah.
Yeah,
My ODD like
Yeah, Tricia.
And this is like the letter E without the and quarter.
Right now, it's the letter, it's the letter F. A little-
Right, we're going from F to E.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And the pitch is facing the entrance. If that
Oh,
makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah,
right? So
that's-
yeah, so as
that's
you're
west.
pulling in,
Yeah.
you're looking at
Yes.
the arrays, yeah. And then, yeah, so that is why I'm bringing to the board tonight a change order for Climate Tech to implement. And also by moving the array off of Porter, moved us up from summer to spring break. So, yeah, I know.
Wow.
So we might get it in even sooner. I'm really excited.
So even though the picture doesn't capture that new
Yeah.
change.
Yes.
The scope of
Description,
work,
yes.
this contract
Yeah.
and the money is,
Nothing changed.
got it.
Yeah.
And then the placement at New Brighton, that's still the same.
Correct.
Right.
That did not change.
Is that why they're USA out here?
They're
USA, USA, sewer, power, electric
Oh,
they're-
doing their boring, yes,
for the board. Okay.
they're boring to make sure they don't hit underground. New Brighton, where that is, as some of our board members remember, that's the bank of where all of our disposed portables came from. And so there are many abandoned underground utilities that they're going through right now to try to figure out, yeah. They weren't all that happy when they started digging around down there. But it's like pretty much most of them are dead and abandoned, and so they'll just be digging them up.
Those are so old.
Yeah, and I said, don't dig too far, you'll find an airport.
Yeah.
You'll find out
So,
when-
Michelle,
Yes.
just a quick question with the New Brighton. I noticed that the solar panels are not that far away from the baseball diamond, kind of like the alternate baseball diamond over there.
Mhm.
Is there any additional protection, or do they need it because of, I mean, we get some of the people that use that field on the weekends and stuff like that, are little leaguers who can crush the ball. Is that in danger of damaging that in any way, or do we have to have anything separate to protect that from baseballs?
I asked that question as well to Climate Tech, and those panels are so sturdy that they're not going anywhere, not with the baseball, not from the angle of where that would be. And in all likelihood, when we have our fields done, the pitch of the baseball field might not end up being there. Also, if I remember correctly, the pitch on the solar panels itself, I think they pitch down to the building. So it's even higher up to the field area.
Yeah, they're angled away from the field.
I believe so, yes.
Great. Okay.
And you can't skateboard on them, right?
Yeah.
We're
Oh,
sure.
they'll find a way, Phil.
Yeah.
Parkour skateboarding.
Oh my gosh.
Well, those roofs are on YouTube.
Oh.
There's skateboarders that have YouTube videos of those roofs and do great.
No, it's a deep
That's why we
fake.
have cameras.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Thank you. Lots
Yeah,
of
fake
cameras.
news.
Yeah.
Fake news.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, actually, Robert brought up a point and got me thinking about the solar panels in the field. Would that prohibit from, let's say, if we were able to put it in a soccer field?
No, not where their placement is.
No.
Where were they before?
At New Brighton, they've always been there. The only small
Oh.
change we made at New Brighton is the third panel it had been a long straight array with the third panel, but we had to move that third panel down by the weight studio because we
I
decided,
see, okay.
yeah, to keep building J and renovate that, it skewed the distance from the building. And so the solution was to move it there. And because it was so close to the original setting, the underground didn't have to be altered enough for DSA to recertify it.
Seems like that's a nice placement for a shade structure too.
That was the other,
For
when we,
PE and
yeah,
sports.
yeah. And then also, I mean, it's hard to tell on this, but the solar is going in on the new buildings. They were solar ready when we had them built, and so they are all going on top of the roofs.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
On the new
That's
buildings.
ideal.
Little cute little blue things.
Yeah.
It's so tiny on
Yeah.
that.
They look like Tetris.
Yeah.
And so I guess with the shade structure, it's a little bit, I do love just a big old open field. I mean, that's wonderful, but do we have plans to maybe try to utilize the shade structure, like add benches or Is that part of the ultimate design to really make use of the shade part of it?
Correct. Like part of this is when we do build the field and we do the track, part of the track will come up against that to provide shade on part of the track area.
Yeah.
And then like at Main Street where it's up on there as
Yeah.
well. We just we don't have the staff currently, but during the summer, they're going to install benches underneath the
cool.
whole length of the Main Street one.
Yeah.
And then they're able to use that as like an outdoor teaching area on top of like a shade structure during.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the principal at Main Street has said that when the days have been hot, it's at least 10 degrees cooler under those structures than it is out on the, you know, on the blacktop itself. So that in and of itself lends nicely to that area. And then, like I said, the fields, we have a lot of passionate employees and I'm really happy
Yeah.
for that. And fields have never come off the list. And just a few things had to come before them. So our next projects will now be, you know, delving into the fields after we complete this
And the
one up.
shades for our home team too.
There you go.
Yeah, definitely.
Make the visitors sit in the.
Robert, you're a really cute visitor. Awesome. Even though it's blurry, I know.
Okay, it's time to play.
Sorry to call it out, but that was really. I miss the days of seeing and being able to hear your dog, Michelle.
Oh, Thor.
Yeah. Oh, all right, nice and clear. Thank you. Any other questions on this one? Super basic. Last question from me, right? It's big impact to the capital facilities fund, but we
yes.
see the value in it. Is that going to leave the capital facilities fund in the shape that it needs to be in for any other plans that we have?
Yes, well, I mean, it will come out of capital facilities. Our district, as I've stated in the past, is super fortunate that we still have the RDA monies coming in every year. We're about 1.5 million yearly until 32 that will collect that money. So it more than pays back the loan on top of adding to the upcoming projects. So yes.
All right. I think we've got all the board questions asked. Don't know if we have any
Oh, wait.
public questions. No one's still here in person, but if we have any emails.
Let's see. And nope, no one on email.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to approve the change order for the Climate Tech contract?
I'll make the motion.
Do you have a second?
I'm happy to second.
TV,
Oh, thank you. Robert seconds.
Mike TV.
Yeah, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Exciting project. Next is consider approval of our 2023-24 basic budget assumptions and guidelines.
All right. So this is all the information provided in our assumptions. Okay, I should take one step back. I apologize. We bring to the board the assumptions that we're using to build our 23-24 budget as we build right now. And that the two main areas of where we gather that information are school services budget report and the common message that is put out and given to us by the County Office of Education. And then the common message is really exactly what it says it is. It is a common message of the themes of the proposed budget and kind of how you can condense them into more bite-sized pieces. And then as the budget the May revise comes out, the June budget gets passed, and then in July, all the trailers will come in to complete the budget process. The common message continuously gets updated. And so really my assumptions for both revenue and somewhat to an extent our expense come from the common message, but more specifically the revenues. I won't go bullet by bullet because obviously you guys can see that on there. The highlights are the 8.13% COLA that is being proposed currently by the governor. Will be part of our 3-year rolling average projection. That is another thing that's still in the budget that is going to stay to try to mitigate some of the ADA cliff that a lot of the districts are hitting right now. We are in declining enrollment. We have continued to be in declining enrollment since the start of the pandemic. And so I have reduced us down by 10 students per year for the next 3 years. I will work with those numbers. I think that's a reasonable amount to continue to decline at. I mean, because we have been declining. I've kept our ADA fairly steady, even with the decline in enrollment. I mean, the hope is possibly coming back to the 95-96% attendance level that we were at pre-pandemic, but currently we are in the last 2 years about 90-91%.
which is average of most districts right now in the state, unfortunately. As some of the other things, lottery revenue is baked in there. That could change. The 2% average yield on county treasury interest is in there. And some of the expenditure components that are added into that are looking at our staffing levels to make any adjustments for the decline enrollment or through attrition are taken into account. Looking at our class sizes to see what that we're within compliance within our contract. And then a lot of the other areas would be through negotiations, any settlement agreements that are ultimately, put into place prior to the adoption of the budget. We'll be able to work those into our budget at that time. And then I guess just supplies, routine, restricted maintenance, all of the things that are generally in there. And then our obligation to have a 3% reserve at all times. And very basic, because really, I say that in the sense of there's nothing that dramatic in the governor's January budget to lead to any drastic assumptions other than some of the categorical funding that's kind of up in the air, which really doesn't impact the building of the budget in the out years necessarily because of the categorical funding. And so this really is more looking specifically at the programs such as special education and routine maintenance that we make contributions to, and then our general fund expenditures. Any questions?
I will tell you on the expenses, number 5 is to me the sleeper one. It's, it's so. I mean, it goes up every year, it's on its own.
So health and welfare, because that's through contract, it does stay stagnant unless unless we negotiate it going up. The one that's the killer is the statutory benefits. The person stirs increases are just
right.
And then unemployment and workers' comp are the other variables in basing your out years.
And I could be wrong, but when they first started talking about how we're going to have to pay off the last time these guys lost a bunch of money, that we couldn't put the money that we're going to have to use to pay that in a reserve, that wasn't allowed.
For the person stirs,
Right.
Like going back to what we kind of talked about earlier, a special reserve fund or something like that, that can't be set up necessarily for contributions.
Right.
It's just I bake in 4% increase in our budget, which is an equivalent of like the 4% is off of the stats, not off of total compensation. So it really, it comes out to roughly $150,000 a year as the estimated cost increases on top of, then you have, through natural step and column, employees move up irregardless of a raise or not. So when they move up, the stats move up with them. Yeah.
Other questions, comments?
I was just, so this document is put together by, this.
No, I put the document together.
Oh, but I'm sorry, what is it? The common assumptions? Does that come from, that's like COE and.
The common message and
common message
and the school services of California, after their analysis of the budget, the governor's budget, they basically create a document off of the budget so that like we as CBOs don't have to hunt and peck through like pages and pages of the budget itself. And the common message is geared specifically towards education.
Okay, that's helpful. And then the student enrollment. So you're predicting a reduction of 10 students for next year. And like, how do you determine that, or where's that come from?
Our past trends, just looking at where we're at, how many 8th graders are going out, how many, that'll get refined as we move along, knowing how our TK and K numbers are coming in, like, possibly how many 6th graders we might be getting in, or 7th graders from Mountain, and how that all ebbs and flows. I mean, there's no exact science to it. It's an area that some districts can get themselves into trouble with because, and that is one thing that the county would call me out on, basically to say, we've been 3 years in declining enrollment and I say we're going to have 100 more kids next year. They're going to be like, yeah, you better show me the whites of their eyes before you put that in the budget. Because if you've been in declining enrollment for 3 years, it's not likely that you're going to increase.
And this past year, we've been declining.
Yeah, since the pandemic, we've been declining. Yes,
So like since we're back in school, like this year, it's still a decline.
yes.
It's been declining since before the
Yeah.
pandemic.
I thought with the Good Shepherd closure,
Yeah.
you had a few more students.
Yeah, I know that, I kind of thought that too, but I don't think that
Maybe
really
that
came out.
stopped a greater decline.
Yeah, very positive.
Thank you.
Well, it's possible the new COVID changes might help make people feel more comfortable about sending their kids to school, but I don't see a lot of kids not coming to school because of that. Does any of your research tell us, I know the cost of living where we are is crazy high. And that's a big reason why I think we lose a lot of our students. Is there anything else that might be coming up in the future to suggest that there might be an uptick?
Well, a little, research does show that we have some pandemic babies possibly coming in the next year.
Yeah.
But
My
that,
neighbor has one.
yeah, I do think, in the next, year or two, the 4 and 5-year-olds that came about during the pandemic might start boosting up our attendance, but Santa Cruz County has been listed as one of the top counties in the state for declining enrollment. And that is, California itself being expensive, and then Santa Cruz County in it itself being expensive. And, when we have houses here selling for $2 million, most of the time we don't have a lot of families moving in there that have, kids or Capitola is still an area of, what is that called? Like generational ownership, right? Like we have a lot of older, generations of families.
Oh, yeah.
In this area. Yeah. And and then God bless them. They're wonderful neighbors to our schools. And they tell us all the time about how their kids went here, 40 years ago. But we don't have new ones. And so that's Capitola and specifically has that. So combination.
So Robert, the county has put out, real estate people have put it out, and the opinion is that this county is just getting older, and that's the way it's going to go. And so normally people who retire, they sell their house and move to their retirement place. They stay here. This is the retirement place. And so there's a lot of seniors that are living alone or just a couple in these big houses because they're here.
Yeah.
Not to mention that.
Yeah, and to start a family here, that's good. That's tough.
Yeah, not to mention, I know a lot of the homes are second homes for people
Yeah.
too. They don't
Yeah.
actually send their kids to school here. They just come here on the weekends to vacation.
Yeah.
Or their Airbnb homes,
Right.
So I don't think we can bank on growing our enrollment.
I guess at some point it's going to flatten out.
Yeah.
Although if we were to have some unique educational programs, we might have other students from the area want to come here.
Gotta stay competitive.
That's what we're
that's for
working
sure.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of our districts in the county are in declining enrollment.
Right.
So we're not, we're
Right.
definitely not unique in that. And everybody has, been hit pretty hard.
How much PD lost? Thousands.
Yeah, and when you look at that proportionally, right, it's almost the same percentage
Right.
for them as it is for us. It's just that it's so much larger because,
Yeah.
the size that they are. But, then you take a district, one of our smalls, who lose maybe 3 kids, and that's proportionally the same as us losing 30. So it's kind of all relative.
So I just want to say I appreciate this and breaking it up, into 3 sections, one for the reserves, that's good. And if it's possible, when we go through our interims next year, if we can slip this in there, so we have this is what we thought was going to happen, and this is what's happening.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know.
That's a great idea, Phil.
It's hard to remember all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
Absolutely.
Coming to the next board meeting, budget bite session.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. That's right.
And Michelle, just last thing, we're comfortable with the 3%, you being able to hold that as a reserve.
It's mandated by law, and yes.
And I know it's mandated. I just wanted to make sure that's a comfortable place for us.
Oh, you mean as a reserve level in overall?
Right.
Well, That's a little bit of a loaded question, but only because, you're talking to the business person. I want a 30% reserve if you let me
Right.
devices, yeah. But 3 to 10% is a typical reserve for school districts. I mean, proportionally speaking, if you look at the 3% reserve, it only covers 2 weeks worth of payroll. So I mean, to put that in perspective of what, what the state, the bar that the state gives us. So yes and no. I mean, 3% is what we are mandated to have, but we typically carry a larger balance than 3%.
Yeah, 3, it just seems low to me.
Yeah,
As
it
a
is,
reserve
yeah,
for the school
yeah.
district.
Yeah, only 2 weeks. That's
That's
a
yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
So Robert.
Yeah.
It runs on cash. It's a kind of
Chaos.
rule, so it's a cash thing. So in a regular business, you want to have 3 to 6 months of working capital in your bank account. And I don't think we do that.
Well, I think education is the only industry that doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Motion?
This, if we don't have any questions or comments from the
Nothing on-
public, nothing on email, thank you, Scott. Then I'm ready for a motion to approve the basic budget assumptions. Wow, Phil's first, it's a race.
Oh, you can move.
Who's second?
Second.
I love it.
Wait, so Callie made the motion and Bill
I think
seconded?
Wait, I want to make the motion.
I agree.
No.
Bill
Cal,
has
no,
an
Callie and
excellent
Phil.
first and second, so it's
Yeah.
Bill's on first, Ted's on second. Okay.
I'm
do
the same
we-
name on this.
So you're
Yeah.
thinking about this
In
job.
favor.
Wait, do the all in favor so I can get my.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Yeah,
much.
before you adjourn, George has already sent
Yeah.
us the usage rates on the portal, so I'll be able to
Oh.
get you that in real time. You got us that. I'll put that in the next Friday update.
Thank you.
Oh, awesome.
He did, and I'm gonna say yes, because I texted him, I said, George, did you hear that from Trustee Dickinson? And he said, yes, I did on it right now.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any
Great
correspondence?
job, George.
No correspondence to report. Any future agenda items requested by trustees at this moment besides what's listed? No. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make it.
Ted, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right,
Otherwise,
all
we have
in
to stay.
favor?
Discussion, yeah.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, thank you. We are
Okay.
adjourned at 8:38 PM.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Look at this. This is the real estate when this is the portal usage. And this is the telephone entry.